Well, hello, Canadian Campaholic here. It'll soon be spring. Kind of hard to believe. Oh, God, it's cold out here. And that means that spring camping reservations are opening up across North America. So today I thought I would spend a little bit of time talking about what you should look for in terms of booking a really good campsite for your trailer or RV. Let's go inside and talk about that where it's a little warmer.
Before we dive in, I'm going to preface this by saying that I don't really know much about the booking systems within the United States, and this is not intended to be an all encompassing instructional lesson on how to book any campsite anywhere, but the general principles apply regardless of where you're staying. If you're in North America, you probably run into issues with securing campsites. They tend to book up very quickly, and a lot of the really best campsites with the best views and the best setups, they book even more quickly because a lot of avid campers have figured out the key things to look for in a campsite, and when they find one that matches that, they tend to try and book it again and again in the future. So to make this a little bit easier, I'm going to try and break it down into a couple of key things. One is going to be making sure that you can fit your camper or your rig into the campsite. The second is going to be to talk about the utilities and distance to those utilities, and then just some general comments about campsites in general. So hopefully these tips will be helpful for you the next time you're booking a campsite. Now, for our demonstration today, we're going to use the Ontario Parks reservation website. I'm not a spokesperson for them, but it's just a fairly decent website in terms of booking campsites. I've noticed in southwestern Ontario, a lot of the conservation areas are using a similar booking system now. But you do have to be careful because some of the more private campgrounds and RV parks may have much more basic websites that just give you kind of a map and then a color-coded area where certain types of rigs can go. So seasonal and non-seasonal, tents versus trailers, and motorhomes versus travel trailers. They don't always give you a huge amount of detail on what the site is going to look like. In those situations, you're better off just to call the park office or look at their contact number on their website and ask them questions about the campsite that will get you the information or the criteria that we're going to talk about today. So, like I said, here I am on the Ontario Parks website. I'm not actually going to book a reservation, so dates are not super critical, but heck, let's just put some dates out into the future. We'll just grab something in June. And you'll notice on this particular website, it does ask you how many people are in your party. That's not really super critical for this demonstration, but it does give you an option for equipment, which leads me to my first point. If possible, you really need to verify that the campsite that you're going to try and stay at is suited for your trailer. And a lot of the parks that set up this information in the website, they're not just looking in terms of can you physically squeeze your rig into the site, but can you even access it? Because if you have, for example, a 33-foot travel trailer and you go on the Ontario Park site and you say, oh, trailer's up to 25 feet. Oh, I can be a little, sneak in under the radar. 25 feet, 33, close enough. Maybe, but if you are doing this sight unseen, you could run into problems because sometimes they will organize their inventory not just based on could a 33-foot trailer fit in the site, but could a 33-foot trailer access it? Because if there's a lot of narrow, twisty, windy lanes going through the campground, you could really run into problems. And I have seen it where folks have showed up, usually late of an evening, in a provincial park with a massive camper, and they can barely fit it into the campsite. So I'm going to narrow this down to trailers up to 25 feet. Ours is a 22-foot travel trailer. Yes, I have booked sites listed under up to 18 feet, but these are sites I've physically examined before and looked at. I've looked at the access, and I know I'm good. But play it safe. We're going to stick within our sizes. So we're going to go up to 25 feet, or about 7.6 meters. And let's go look at some campsites. Now, again, with the Ontario Parks booking system, what I really like about it is that it will only highlight sites that will work with your rig. So some of these have already been booked. Some of them don't really meet the criteria. and some of them are only available for certain dates. But already using this reservation system, you're starting to get an idea of, can my camper fit physically in that spot? The other thing that can help you with this is if you're fortunate enough to get a booking system that has photos. You really want to take a look at photos of campsites if you can. And even if the website itself doesn't have great photos, there's a lot of forums on Facebook and other parts of social media. I've even seen websites where they just specialize in cataloging photos that people have taken of the various campsites. Very helpful in understanding, is that site going to work for you? So we look at this site. It's site number 54, Point Farms Provincial Park. It says on here it's suitable for a tent, 2 tents, 3 tents, or a trailer no bigger than 18 feet in length. It's talking about radio free. Radio free basically means no electronic sound or music. So you can't be playing your radio. You can't have your outside speakers running. You really shouldn't have any kind of electronically generated music of any kind. And even if you're going to be inside watching television, if it's going to be loud, keep the windows closed. So just be mindful of that if you're a first-time camper, that if you do want to play some tunes, don't book yourself into a radio-free area. If you're like me and you appreciate peace and quiet, you just want to have the sounds of nature and, you know, the dull roar of people around you enjoying their campsites, but no music, then radio-free is a good one. It does talk about electric. We're going to get into amenities in a minute, but let's just focus on the picture. So let's make this picture a bit bigger. And so the first thing I do when I'm selecting a campsite, even if it says my trailer can fit, is I look at the picture itself. And unfortunately, in this example, there's only one photo. But we've camped at this campsite before. And the first thing that draws to my attention is what's access going to be like on the site. It looks like the real estate for the camper is going to have to be here off to the right, which is typical of most sites. But you've got this big honking cedar tree right in the middle of the campsite. I've also got some branches hanging over the entrance. Now, this doesn't mean that it's a no-brainer. Not a no-brainer, but a deal-breaker, I should say. But when I look at it, I'm already starting to think of, well, what's it going to be like to try and back in here? Look at the fire pit location, something else important to note. Sometimes it'll say in the description, and we'll look at the description in a minute, where the fire pit is located. Believe it or not, you can get some campsites where the fire pit is located way too close to where the camper is going to be. And I've noticed in recent years, a lot of the parks have started to relocate these fire pits to somewhere a little further over that makes sense. Picnic table, you should be looking for where that is when you show up and moving it if necessary. I happened to pick this site because I've stayed in it before with a tent trailer and ran into all kinds of problems getting hung up on this tree, because although there was room to get the camper in here, I positioned it fairly far back, but then I couldn't open my awning properly because it was getting all fouled up in the tree. So again, access is key. Now, unfortunately, there's only one picture for that campsite, so let's take a look at the next one down the lane. And here's an example of a campsite where there's tons of access. Very wide open, big open space. You can see the fire pit, again, far off to the left. Yeah, there's a picnic table there, but you can move that. And, oh, look, you can see the power pedestal right back there, that little yellow post. We'll talk about utilities in just a second. But just in terms of pure access, this is a good site. You've got lots of room to swing the trailer in there. No major obstructions, so that looks pretty good. In this case, we do have a second photo. That's looking at it from another angle. Oh, yeah, access is going to be really, really good in this this particular site. This is another campsite that we've stayed in before. And this one's pretty short. So notice with this one, even though it technically said trailer up to 18 feet, that is a pretty shallow site. Not a lot of space in there to fit a camper, but again, the fire pit is off to the left. So I think you get the gist here, folks. Take a look at the pictures of the site if you can, and try to see what your access is going to be like. The other thing that you want to think of when you're looking at campsites, of course, is going to be shade. Now, in this particular example, site number 8, we've got what would be considered partial shade. So at certain points in the day, you're going to have a little more sun. As the sun is directly overhead in the summer months, you're going to have a nice little bit of shade here, and then in the evening when the sun goes behind the trees, it's very shady. Now this is going to really be based on your own personal preference. I prefer partial shade. I don't want full sun because you just roast your butt off, basically. You sweat. If you're going to be in the camper, I can almost guarantee you're going to have your air conditioning running the entire time, and being in a tent in full sun is pretty miserable. I also don't like full shade. If you're in an area like this where it's very heavily wooded and there's a lot of trees, there could be a lot of mosquitoes. Bugs and critters really love cool, shady places, so I try not to stay in full shade if I can help it. Partial shade is definitely the way to go. If we go back to, I think it was 52, does it say on here? Let's go view more details. It's saying full shade. That's not actually truly accurate. That's, yeah, take a look at the pictures, folks. Sometimes these descriptions are not always fully accurate. While we're here, though, this brings me to another cool point, or an important point, I should say, and that is going to be your utility access. We always look for sites that have an electrical hookup. We want to be able to plug in our phones in the camper and charge them up. We don't have an inverter. We want to make sure that we can run the air conditioner if we need it. And there's just other elements of camping that I prefer to be on a 110 connection. So this is service type is electric. It tells you what the ampage is, what the how many amp service. If you're coming in with a massive motorhome and you've got a dishwasher and a dryer and a washing machine, well, you need to make sure that you've got the right level of service. If you're going to be running those kinds of appliances, you're probably looking at 50 amp service. This one's not going to cut it. It's also going to help you understand what kind of adapters are you going to have to get. Are you going to have to get an adapter to go from the 30 amp plug, which most trailers come with as stock, down to like your 15 amp outlet in your house? Or on a flip side, are you going to have to convert down from the 50 amp plug on your trailer down to 30 amp and so forth? How far away are you from the outlet? This is one that trips up a lot of new campers, especially new RV owners, is how far away is the power connection. I like that in a lot of these pictures at Ontario parks, you can see the power connection. If you can see that yellow pedestal in Ontario parks, that's great because those are shared, and great, I have good access. So right here you can see we would park the trailer in this space here, and then I've just got to run the cord back. Even in a situation like this, though, you've got to be careful because most campers, the shore power cord, this is the electrical cord that snakes out of the back of the trailer, they're usually only 10 to 15 feet, maybe 20 feet tops. They may not necessarily be at the back of the rig. I've seen some older trailers where they're coming out of the front, so you lose a lot of length. You don't have a lot of reach. Get yourself a nice extension. You can, again, adapt down to 15 amp, but now you've got to be very careful about running any kind of air conditioner or microwave on 15 amp. You can do it, but if you've got a roof-mounted AC, highly recommend avoid using 15 amp. If it's wall-mounted, you can probably do it, but you can't run your microwave and your AC at the same time, or a space heater plus microwave at the same time on 15 amp. It just can't handle it. You're going to fry your cord. So what I would recommend is if you're really serious about camping in an RV, is get yourself some good quality extensions, either 30 or 50 amp, depending on your need. For us, we went on Amazon a few years ago, picked up two 50-foot, 30 amp extension cords. That gives me 100 plus feet, if you count the cord coming out of the trailer, of reach. I've never had a problem with getting hooked up with electrical now. A lot of campgrounds will loan out cords for a fee, but you really don't want to guarantee that they've got one in stock. So definitely look at where your electrical utilities are going to be located. Some of these campsites, if I go back to, I think it was site number 8, if we look at the details on this one, outlet distance is 18 meters. Well, 18 meters has got to be almost 60 feet. Like, it's way back in the bushes in the next campsite behind you. So you definitely want to make sure that you're taking into account the distance. The same would be true for sewer hookups. Ontario parks don't have sewer hookups. It's a dumping station. But if you're going to be at an RV park or somewhere that has sewer hookups, look for that. Make sure that you've got a sufficient length of sewer hose if you're going to try and dump the tanks while you're at the campsite. If it's an RV park that doesn't have photos and information, then call and ask what is the distance from the pad or from where the trailer is to the sewer connection, so that I make sure I have enough hose. On a side note, when it comes to sewer hoses, you can buy these extendable, I don't know what you would really call it, like a mount that you sit the sewer hose in. Possibly a good investment. I've camped at sites that have full hookups, but then the sewer dump is a little bit uphill, and it's quite a bit above the ground. I'll let you think about the physics itself, but yeah, when that hose slumps down, it's a little hard to get it to go uphill and into the sewer connection, if you know what I mean. So something else to consider. Another thing that is on the Ontario Park site, which is sometimes helpful, is the dimensions. This is in meters. So we're looking at, 46 feet or so wide by, 33 feet wide, let's say, by, 36 feet in depth. Gives you a general idea of the dimensions of it. Something else that Ontario Parks does, which I kind of appreciate, is the quality. I'm not sure what their criteria is for this, but is the ground nice and solid, or is it a big mud pit, or has it got a lot of obstructions? What is the privacy like? This says average privacy. If you are on a corner site and you've got, you're exposed on two sides, you're not going to have a lot of privacy. If you're going to go to a campground where it's just grass pitches, skinny little trees, you're not going to have any privacy at all, and that's fine for some folks, but maybe that's something that you want to consider. They also talk about, what kind of ground cover is it. In this case, it's a mixture of gravel and grass. They're talking about where is the fire pit location, but again, folks, look at the pictures. Don't just base it off of the information. What you will find as you go around looking at campsites and booking campsites is you'll start to build up an inventory of sites that you really like. The unfortunate thing there is what we like in a campsite is probably going to be common amongst many campers. Ergo, that site is going to be hard to book and will become very popular. Another tip that I would give you is when you're actually staying at a campground, walk around. Don't be nosy and invade people's privacy, but take a look at some of the other campsites. Make a note on a little piece of paper or on your phone of other sites that you think look like they would be a good option to you. It's kind of a nice excuse to get out and walk and just to increase your options. Lastly, I think we'll close in saying that in theory, you could make just about any campsite work. Quick story, we stayed at, here, let me show you. We stayed at Pinery Provincial Park, and we booked a campsite in an area that I was fairly familiar with. It's part of the campground that we'd stayed at before, Riverside 4, and we ended up booking site 841, and it doesn't look like they've ever fixed this. So let me scroll down here. So this is site 845, and we've stayed in this campsite plenty of times. You can see it'll account for something up to 25 feet. Outlet distance, it's almost right in the campsite. Let me see if I can show you the pictures. These are not very good pictures, but just back here, there it is right there. You just about make it out. There's the power pedestal. You back your camper right in here. It's a little narrow, but a good amount of depth, and you're literally right on top of your power connection. Good access, partial shade. This photo doesn't do it justice. This makes it look like it's all crumbly and flooded, but it's really not that bad. We've stayed in this campsite a lot. Now, right across from that campsite, I thought was 841, right? Look at this map. Here's 845, here's 841. Well, in reality, folks, the campsite that is actually across from 845 is not 841. It's 844. And this is the site I thought I was booking. Doesn't look too bad, right? A little bit of a shallow slope. I guess I should also mention that when you're booking campsites, look at the slope and the terrain, because that can indicate how tricky it's going to be to get your rig in there, which ties into this story. When we arrived, I blindly booked a site. I thought it was this one. Wasn't paying attention. We rolled into the campground with our 22-foot travel trailer and went to this site thinking it was ours. There were tents in it. Someone had left a little bit of a fire smoking. All of their equipment and stuff was all still there. And I thought, oh my God, some jerk has not left the campsite. They are still there. I'm going to run into problems. I started looking onto the reservation, and all of a sudden my heart sank. I wasn't in 844. I was in 841. And I thought, oh my goodness, in the map, 841 is meant to be right across from 845. Oh no, it's not. It's around the corner. When I drove up to this campsite, my heart sank. I couldn't believe it. Now, these photos don't do it justice. But that is quite a slope. Now, they may have graded it since we stayed in it. But yeah, this picture doesn't do it justice. It's a little teeny tiny site. It's very narrow. You've got all these roots right here. And I don't know what the angle of the slope was, but it was something like this. So here I am trying to reverse my little camper up that slope. I had to put a whole bunch of blocks under the tongue jack to try and keep it level. The step, we've only got a single step going up into the camper. It was like 2.5 feet off the ground. It was ridiculous. I'll try and share some pictures now so that you can get a better sense of what the angle was like. But it was pretty crazy trying to perch this camper in this campsite. Now, if I look at the description for this, it does say trailer up to 18 feet, which is pretty optimistic. I wonder if it says anything about the slope. No, it doesn't say anything about the slope, those sneaky devils. But long story short, it was a very intriguing situation, not one that I would ever want to repeat. And it just goes to show that if you're not careful, you can accidentally book a site that really is not going to work well for you. That'll do it for today's video. If you have any tips, suggestions, or hints on how to select an excellent campsite, please put those in the comments below. I'm sure I missed a bunch of things, but I think this will give you a good foundation to get you started. Happy camping. We'll talk to you later.